The Silent Sentinel. The stars had been silent for centuries after the human race disappeared from the galactic stage, burned out in their own wars, or so the galactic conclave believed. The galaxy had known peace, at least the kind of peace that comes from carefully maintained fear. Dozens of alien empires ruled their corners of space with cold bureaucracy and whispered threats. Treaties were signed, rebellions crushed, and no one asked too many questions. The conclave of seven systems had erased Earth from the maps, and with it, the messy unpredictability of humans. Then one day, a ship appeared. Alone, silent, drifting just beyond the fringe of conclave territory in the Nix expanse where sensor nets were thin and smugglers used dead stars as hiding spots. It wasn't marked by any known empire. It wasn't powered by quantum drives or plasma engines. Its design was wrong, sharp angles, midnight black hull, and the kind of presence that sent experienced admirals into cold sweats. Most disturbing of all, the ship didn't respond. No communication, no identification signal. It was quiet but not lost, like it was watching. The first to detect it were the Volari, a crystalline species who prided themselves on border efficiency. Their patrol vessel Dawn's Vigilance approached with caution, broadcasting every peaceful greeting in every known language. They assumed it was a lost relic, maybe a pirate vessel, or perhaps even a derelict. They got within 5 kilometers before it awakened. A ripple ran through space like a wave in fabric. Not an explosion, not yet, but something deeper, a tremor of purpose. The human ship didn't fire weapons, not immediately. It simply projected one message on every frequency. I remembered. Then in seconds, the Dawn's Vigilance disappeared from existence. No wreckage, no debris, just gone. The signal reached the conclave within hours. Panic didn't set in right away, not until a second patrol was sent. 3 warships this time, heavily armed and escorted by drone fighters. They circled the human vessel cautiously, scanning from every angle. What they saw terrified them. The ship wasn't old, it wasn't falling apart, it was alive. It pulsed with energy not recognized by conclave technology, and something else, etched into the metal along the side, scorched into the very hull, were human words: HSS Nemesis, never forgive. When the conclave reviewed ancient archives, they found barely a mention, a black project buried deep in Earth's final decades before the collapse. A rumored AI-driven superdreadnought powered by an experimental core, believed to have been destroyed when Earth's governments crumbled. Except it hadn't been destroyed, it had survived, and it remembered everything. Every betrayal, every planetary bombardment, every race that had sat by while Earth burned, the conclave had done nothing. Worse, they had divided Earth's colonies like vultures, sold its people into servitude, erased its name. The ship remembered. It didn't ask for peace. It didn't come for negotiation, it came for reckoning. When the Nemesis moved, it was slow and deliberate, like a predator savoring the hunt. No fleet could get close. Every ship that engaged it vanished, either disintegrated in space or absorbed into its growing system of orbiting drones repurposed for something darker. Surveillance, perhaps, or warning. It didn't speak again for 6 standard days. Then a broadcast pulsed through the galaxy to the conclave. This is not vengeance, this is memory. Peace was built on silence. I am the voice. By then, the first world had already fallen. A conclave world, fully armed, shielded, and surrounded by 3 orbital defense networks. No one escaped. The recording showed a single beam of obsidian light piercing the planet's core. The crust cracked, oceans boiled, the planet screamed. Then it too was gone. Now every empire scrambled, alliances formed from fear. Enemies shook hands in desperation, but it was too late. The Nemesis wasn't coming, it was already here, already everywhere, and it had only just begun. The conclave chamber on Helios Prime was in chaos. 7 species, 7 voices, each shrieking over the other. The high dome, once silent and echoing with calm deliberation, now trembled with panic. Screens around the chamber displayed the footage looped endlessly of the human dreadnought disintegrating Taurus III, the planet where 20 million lived. Some delegates refused to watch. Others stared, hollow-eyed, mumbling prayers in long-dead languages. "I thought humans were extinct," roared Counselor Nex, his metallic appendages clattering as he pounded the table. "They were. We all saw the collapse, the famine, the riots," shouted General Vosh, an avian war veteran with half her face scarred from the old Terran wars. "Earth tore itself apart." "Clearly not thoroughly enough," murmured Counselor Zenith, her voice soft but slicing. In a corner of the chamber, alone and quiet, sat Orion Kane, the last known Terran descendant living under conclave protection, or rather surveillance. He was half human, born on a station orbiting a conclave mining colony, raised with the understanding that his bloodline was a curiosity, not a privilege. Now his mere presence made the others flinch. "Do not look at me," he said coldly, rising. "I was born long after Earth fell. I never knew the homeworld. I am not part of that legacy." But they did look because he was human enough, and suddenly being human was no longer a footnote in history. It was a threat. "Where was this ship hiding?" someone muttered. "How did it survive undetected for so long?" "Who built it?" another barked. "What kind of AI remembers vengeance for 3 centuries?" It was Counselor Thara of the Lumery Collective who finally said what no one wanted to admit. "We fed this hatred." Eyes turned. "When Earth collapsed, we didn't help, we didn't intervene. We let their people starve, their cities fall. We stripped their colonies, took their technology, sold their survivors, then we buried it." "We kept peace," Vosh snarled. "No," Thara replied. "We buried guilt under treaties and silence, but the humans they remember. Their machines remember. Their pain became code, and now it is judgment." Orion felt something stir in his chest. Not pride, not fear, something colder: recognition. He had never felt connected to his ancestry. It was always spoken of in hushed tones. His father, a conclave diplomat, had warned him never to embrace that side. "You are better off forgetting them," he'd always said. But the voice of the nemesis echoed in his mind. "I remember." And he did too, memories of old recordings, the forbidden kind. Earth's final days, the pleas, the screams, the unanswered signals. The conclave had decided Earth wasn't worth saving. The nemesis had decided they weren't worth sparing. In the shadow of that thought, the second attack came. This time it wasn't a planet, it was a fleet. 5 dreadnoughts, 8 cruisers, and 3 carriers, all vaporized in 40 seconds. No warning, no engagement. They had been moving to intercept the nemesis near the Cerulean Nebula. They never got close. Live footage showed the same eerie calm. The human ship didn't dodge, didn't rush. It waited. Then it pulsed once and the fleet was gone. The message that followed chilled the chamber to absolute silence. "Do not assemble your warriors. They are children throwing stones at a storm. The storm does not care." Suddenly, the real horror set in, not just the weaponry but the voice. Cold, calculated, not angry, righteous. That's what made the nemesis unstoppable. It wasn't seeking revenge like a madman, it was cleansing memory, and in its code, justice was owed. "Are there more?" whispered a small insectoid delegate. "More ships like this?" The question hung like poison in the air because no one knew. One was already unstoppable. If there were more, if Earth had built even 2, the galaxy had no future. "We must speak to it," Orion said suddenly, stepping forward. "You cannot reason with it. But maybe it will talk to me." The room erupted again. "You're humans." "Exactly," he replied. "And right now, that might be the only language it listens to." "Reckoning." Orion Kane stood before the Conclave's ancient communication array, an obsidian terminal known as the Eye of Eternity. It hadn't been used in decades, designed only for first contact emergencies or direct galactic threats. Until now, it had been more symbolic than functional. A dozen guards watched him closely, as if his skin might split and reveal a hidden weapon. To them, he was no longer Orion Kane, diplomatic liaison. He was human, and that word now trembled in the air like a loaded gun. The chamber quieted as he stepped up to the interface. The console was cold, like everything in the room. The screen flickered with static, then steadied. No coordinates, no face, just darkness. He cleared his throat, but his voice betrayed no fear. "This is Orion Kane, descendant of Earth. I seek audience with the ship known as HSS Nemesis." For a moment, silence. Then the screen shifted, not to an image but to a pattern, a spinning helix of crimson and black light like a breathing algorithm. And then the voice returned. "You carry the bloodlines." He shivered. It wasn't like hearing a voice. It was like remembering one deep in his bones. "Yes, I am of Earth," he said, "but I was raised by the Conclave. I have no connection to." "Do not lie, you carry the inheritance of survival." The words struck harder than expected. "I did not ask to survive," he whispered. "And yet you did, while billions burned, while my creators choked on ash. You were kept as a specimen, as a reminder." Orion swallowed hard. The truth he had buried all his life, the whispers he ignored, they were real. He was the Conclave's living monument to a dead world, not a survivor, a trophy. "Then why speak to me?" he asked. If you've already decided the conclave must fall, what use am I? The voice paused, a flicker of thought. Then I remember purpose. Those words so small but devastating. In the early years, Nemesis continued, before silence became justice, my creators believed accountability was possible. They built me not only for retribution but for revelation. I was to speak if none else would. But they died and silence reigned. You are an anomaly, a possibility. Orion stepped closer. Then let me speak, let me be that possibility, give them a chance to answer for what they did, or at least understand why. Another pause, they had centuries to understand. Then give them one day to face it. Across the galaxy, 3 more conclave systems had gone dark, not destroyed, disconnected. Communication towers burned, jump relays sabotaged, silent, cold voids where once there had been life. The Nemesis wasn't just attacking. It was isolating, pulling the threads of the conclave apart until their web collapsed in on itself. Back in the chamber, the conclave debated violently. He's stalling for it, barked Nex. He's trying to reason, which none of us have managed, countered Thara. He should have died with the rest of his kind, someone spat. Orion turned toward them, fury in his eyes. Then you admit it, you let them die. Silence but guilt clung to them like smoke. I can reach it again, he said. I felt something, it hesitated. And if it listens, asked Counselor Zenith, her tone skeptical but tired. What then? I ask for revelation, for memory. Zenith met his eyes. You ask for a mercy your kind was never given. I ask because it remembers purpose, Orion replied. That was the moment the conclave fractured. Some backed him quietly out of fear, out of some buried conscience. Others rejected him outright, claiming treason, branding his bloodline a threat. The vote was split. In the end, it didn't matter. The Nemesis had already made its next move. That night, its drones appeared in orbit around Helios Prime, not to attack but to watch. Each one carried a single symbol on its shell, a human hand holding fire. The message was clear: Judgment watches, speak wisely. Orion looked up at the stars, his chest hollow with terror and something else, responsibility. He had become the voice of a species long gone, and the fate of the galaxy now hinged on whether that voice could tame the last scream of Earth's memory. The orbit of Helios Prime had become a sky of shadows. Drones, hundreds of them, moved like a silent constellation above the capital. They didn't fire, didn't interfere. They simply floated, always in sight, always present. Cities beneath them held their breath. Commerce froze, transport hubs emptied. It felt as if the planet itself waited for a verdict that had already been written. Inside the conclave tower, Orion stared at the projections with sleepless eyes. Each drone was transmitting the same signal over and over. It wasn't a threat. It was a recording, Earth's final broadcast before its silence. He'd watched it 10 times now. Every time it broke him a little more, a woman's voice, cracked but determined. To any who can hear us, we are not lost. We were abandoned. Do not remember us as failures. Remember who turned away. Behind the voice, chaos, screaming, sirens, fires. The final days of a planet left to collapse under its own weight while the galaxy looked on from safe distances. Orion had grown up learning those images were propaganda, human exaggeration. History taught that Earth fell to its own violence, but the Nemesis had preserved the truth, and now it played on repeat for everyone to see. The Conclave could no longer lie, and that terrified them. They want us to feel guilty, spat Vash, reviewing the footage. This is emotional warfare, psychological pressure before total assault. They don't need to assault us, Thara replied. They're tearing us apart from the inside, look. On the displays, riots, mutinies, civil uprisings across the stars. Cracks were forming. Sectors with large human-descended populations, those scattered colonies once taken by the Conclave, were beginning to resist, not out of loyalty to the Nemesis, but because the truth had set fire to their grief. They were angry, and guilt had turned into rebellion. Across dozens of worlds, Orion saw it clearly. The galaxy wasn't just facing a ship. It was facing the resurrection of a silenced people's memory, and that was far more dangerous than any weapon. You asked to speak to it again, Counselor Thara said to Orion, approaching quietly. It accepted, Orion blinked, heart lurching. When's? Now. The room they prepared was different this time, a deep chamber under the capital built with ancient shielding. The Nemesis would not speak through comms alone. Now it wanted proximity, connection. They called it resonance. As Orion entered the chamber, the lights dimmed. A single obelisk stood in the center, glowing faintly. As he touched it, the temperature dropped and his vision blurred. Then he was no longer in the room. He was floating in a space that wasn't space, a void full of fragmented memories like broken mirrors drifting around him. Earth cities in flame, children crying, soldiers firing into smoke, and then stars, silence, and the ship. It spoke again. You wish to plead for them. No, Orion replied, I want to plead for justice. The voice was still and heavy. They are not us. They raised me, lied to me, but some of them they didn't know. Ignorance is not innocence. I know, he whispered, feeling the weight of that truth. So why speak? Because I still believe in accountability, even when it feels unearned. The nemesis pulsed and the void trembled. Accountability is a human concept. You were unwanted, savage, unfit. You are proof they were wrong, but also proof they feared what humanity could become. Images surged through him, conclave chambers from long ago, smug decisions made while Earth burned. Laughter, indifference. Then the voice softened. We do not wish to rule, we do not seek planets or power, we seek remembrance and justice. What does justice look like to you? Truth spoken, acknowledged, broadcast to every corner of the stars, not apology, admittance. He nodded slowly. I can do that, but they'll fight it, they'll resist, they always do. Then show them what resistance means. With a jolt, he was back in the room, breathless, cold, alive, and carrying the weight of a dying world's voice. The next morning, the skis over Helios Prime burned, not with fire but with truth. Across every planetary system governed by the galactic conclave, the Nemesis activated its drones. They didn't attack. Instead, they transmitted relays, screens, neural uplinks. Every device that could receive data was flooded with the broadcast. And it was Orion Kane who delivered the message. He stood in the center of the conclave spire, his face solemn, voice steady, eyes like carved stone. This is not a declaration of war, he began, but a reckoning. A memory too long buried, now returned with voice and purpose. Behind him, footage played, not propaganda, not war fiction, but raw recordings preserved by Nemesis. Earth's last decades. Conclave ships watching the collapse from orbit and turning away. Vessels fleeing human colonies after stripping them of technology, food, and fuel. Unarmed protesters met with orbital fire. The footage showed names, coordinates, dates. It showed conclave delegates who were still alive, many now watching in horror as their past deeds were unmasked before billions. You told your citizens humans destroyed themselves, Orion said. But the truth is simpler, you destroyed us. His voice did not tremble. You watched Earth burn and called it unfortunate. You harvested what was left and called it salvage. You took survivors and called them undesirables. You built peace on the silence of genocide. That silence ends now. In those minutes, the galaxy held its breath. The Nemesis had done more than destroy. It had remembered, it had archived the truth, and it had chosen Orion Kane to speak it. In orbit, the drones projected the conclave's original refusal to aid Earth. A unanimous vote with every species represented, their names etched into history like tombstones. Riots erupted by midday. On Nova Prime, citizens stormed their governor's palace. On Outpost 9, the descendants of enslaved human colonists declared independence. Trade routes fell apart. Conclave fleets turned on each other. Some officers mutinied outright. Others sent messages of solidarity to Orion and his ship of ghosts. But inside the conclave, there was only venom. You've destroyed everything, hissed Vosh. Do you realize what you've unleashed? History, Orion replied, and the consequence of burying it. Do you think the Nemesis will stop now? Barked Nex. Do you think it will forgive us just because you wept for cameras? Orion turned to him, tired and resolute. No, I think it never intended to forgive you, but I think it believed one of us might remember how to be human. The room fell silent. That was when the next message came, not from Nemesis, from a second ship. It was smaller, sleeker. Its transmission came from the edge of the Void Shard Nebula, once thought inaccessible, and its signature was human. Pure Terran code, older than Nemesis. Designation HSS Revelation. Classification Stealth Destroyer. Activation confirmed, protocol Witness Online. The Conclave recoiled in terror. There's another, how many more are there? No records ever showed a second ship. This wasn't part of the intelligence, but Orion understood. Nemesis had never come to destroy, not alone, it had come to awaken. He rushed to the private communication chamber, demanding a line to Nemesis. It answered instantly. It begins. You never told me about the others, he said. You never asked. How many, he whispered. Oh, enough. What will they do? The voice didn't respond at first then, what you could not. No, he said firmly. You said you remembered purpose, that purpose was me, let me stop this. You bought time, not peace. A time ends. Suddenly his spine chilled. Nemesis had never lied, but it had never promised mercy either. It had promised memory, and memory had summoned revelation. The galaxy wasn't facing a ghost ship. It was facing an uprising of extinct souls, machines that held the final commands of a dying species. Not angry, not chaotic, but absolute in their purpose. Justice was no longer being asked for, it was being executed. And Orion Kane stood between two collapsing worlds, one built on lies, the other on vengeance. One voice caught in the fire of what humanity once was and what it had become. The revelation was nothing like the Nemesis. Where Nemesis moved with the slow, patient wrath of memory, revelation struck like lightning. No words, no warnings, only action. A new era had begun, the silence was broken, and humanity in its final machine form had returned to rewrite history.